Hey there, guys. It's Kage coming at you, and today we're going to do a little bit of a special video. I do have more Tactica stuff lined up, but kind of wanted to set the stage for something here. I had somebody the other day, I don't just kind of like mention something about monetization and everything and how we got here to where we are in present day. And I kind of wanted to go over monetization as it's happened through kind of my eyes. And, it's a long journey. I'm going to rattle some stuff off here. Probably going to provide some imagery to some extent. And this is just going to be, again, how I saw things. So this could be wrong. This could be inaccurate. Because, again, some of this is going to be from as far back as, like 7, 8 year old Kage. So let's start off pretty simple here. And this adventure starts. You had Atari, you had Nintendo, Sega. I played all those as a child, even the Sega Master System. Now, this here, the Sega Channel, is one of like the first sort of monetization efforts for gaming itself. Potentially in this day and age, you would kind of consider this to be the rudimentary Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Plus. And this here will touch because this does transition itself down the road as well into the Sega Dreamcast. So this was Sega's internet system here. Launch date was 1994. I don't remember ever doing anything with this. I had seen it in magazines as a kid. I had heard about it. Never touched on this system at all. I couldn't tell you much of anything on it. I had, not even an inkling of how it worked because I was pretty young at the time. 94 it launched. I would have been 10 years old. And, you know, by the time it launched, there was already like other stuff going on. I mean, you know, we were way into like what was it? Let's go and look here. When did the Sega Saturn drop? I mean, that was a year before the Sega Saturn dropped. So I mean, we were at the very end of the life cycle of that system. I mean, at that point, I would have had, a Sega 32X and maybe and some other. Well, actually, I skipped the Sega CD, but just to give you an idea, that service kind of came too late, but that was kind of a precursor into things. So, yeah, you have as far back as early 90s where Sega was doing the internet service for gaming. Now, as we go on, some of the other monetization, things that happened were back when we got to the PlayStation era. PlayStation era ended up having memory cards. PlayStation 1, you'd buy the memory cards. Let's see if we get to the. Let's look here. Hey, Lucky. Where is the first PlayStation? Cool. Okay, so PS1 that dropped back in '95 for North America. I mean, the little memory card ports. You'd buy the games. You'd buy the cards to get the memory, and that was kind of like another early monetization thing that they had. Now, keep in mind, the system also did have a variation to it. A PS1 that had a portable screen as well. So I mean, it was interesting. I mean, it was a cool little system. I played around with it a little bit. We had one. I don't remember doing too much with it on trips or anything though. I don't remember us ever like really using that system. But the main takeaways for this era are, the memory cards for the PlayStation, and also the other main thing was for the N64 had an expansion pack slot to it, which you needed to have that slot filled with whatever, I don't even remember what they call it anymore, to be able to play some of the better games. I think like the Zelda game. I think Ocarina of Time needed it. I think Perfect Dark needed it. So there were some games that needed that upgrade. And this was, 96. I don't remember when that expansion pack came out. So, there were different monetization things applied here. Nothing crazy at that time. I mean, you had the memory cards, you had the expansion packs, little things here and there. And, then we get to the Sega Dreamcast era. Now, I still have a Sega Dreamcast, and this system, this I would say is pretty much where a lot of the monetization groundwork comes into play, because they did have the online service. I mean, Phantasy Star Online, literally a game that started off on the Sega Master System, worked its way to the Sega Genesis, and then ended up here as an online variation that to this day, Phantasy Star Online 2, Phantasy Star Online New Genesis, these things still exist. So this just gives you an idea of some, yeah, Phantasy Star Online down here says 2000, of some of the groundwork that they put in place that still to this day exist in some way, shape, or form, which is crazy because not a lot of these things exist. It's kind of like with Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest still has an online mode in Japan only, but here Sega was able to get something that eventually became global thanks to Xbox, but that's a story for a different day. But ultimately, Sega had the memory cards, but their memory cards were VMUs, virtual memory units. They had like cool little mini games you could play. I remember like one for like Skies of Arcadia that rewarded me for playing that game, and interesting features to them. And you could hold not just one but two memory cards into each controller. So I don't think any other console's done that, but then again, we don't have to spend on memory cards anymore. So not only did Sega have a service, and on top of that, you know, it had the online capabilities to it, the modem. You could get a keyboard. I mean, this was like the first real portal for some people into the internet, into gaming on the internet. Granted, this time there was computers out there. There was different internets. Think all the way back to like Prodigy to AOL. So we get to this era here, and the online framework is there in a lot of different ways. Again, because you have the online aspect from the internet providers, where they have a lot of little games. I mean, I'm trying to think when EverQuest came out for me. Let's see, when did EverQuest come out? So EverQuest came out a year later after the Sega Genesis. I played a little bit of it, didn't really get too much into it, but once we get here, the main model at this point now for these types of games, outside of a box price, mind you, is the online subscription, which to this day I still feel is like the best monetization for your buck, because if you're only paying for a base game and a monthly subscription, you could go back at the end of the year and you could clearly say, well, I spent $60 for this expansion and I paid, $13 a month for the year for this game. So, I spent overall maybe a little over $200 on a game, whereas in the current era, if you spend money and you're on a free to play, that number could be anywhere. That number could be anywhere from 0 to sky's the limit depending on your budget. So this was the first major MMO that I had played, online game. I got into it a little bit with a friend back in the day. However, the real one that I remember really getting into was Ragnarok Online, which 4 years later, we're in 2003 at this point. I had played the beta for it, and again, this game here, it started with a pay to play model, subscription based model, which at the time was, I still feel like was one of the better values, because with the newer systems, things that come in place down the road, yeah, not not fun, not fun at all. So I mean, the monetization here was pretty, wasn't egregious at all. I mean, some people had problems with it. Kids couldn't, play these games because they didn't have credit cards. You know, and then you also had RuneScape back then, which I played. RuneScape had a membership program. I don't think I ever did the membership until later. I maybe tried it for a little bit, but for the most part, I stayed to like, you know, pay to play subscription games for a while. I did get into the free to play realm at some point. I want to see, when was that? Let's take a look here. It's Night Online. Night Online. E Games. M Games. Yeah, Night Online had come out to Malaysia. So around 2004. Now, Night Online is a very interesting game because even to this day, they've relaunched this game. This game originally came out as a pay-to-play. It was part of, I think, M Games or some other, well, E Games here. Let's look at that. I had played quite a bit of games from them back in the day. I don't see much about their online stuff. Maybe it was a different company. There were so many different companies back then that I had played games with that they were just all over the place. Let's see if we can find. So here's another big one. So we're gonna jump ahead. This game had not come out for a while. Solve the Ultimate Nation was one of those free-to-play games that I had jumped into, where people had spent a lot of money in, had the guild systems, had a lot of stuff to it. I know I probably jumped over, what's it called? Let's look here. Elder Scroll Horse Armor DLC. When did that come out? Just curious here. Let's see. I just want to see when the horse armor came out. I don't care about the actual. It's $2.50. So back in 2006. Okay. So 2006, somewhere after that, the horse armor came out. Meanwhile, the free-to-play market, I had played a bunch of different games as the years went on. Tried out a lot of free-to-play games, and some of them were pretty awful in terms of the monetization, in terms of the tricks they employed. And, you had all sorts of these gaming companies involved. Endors, Nexon, Webzen, EG, Aria, a whole bunch of different companies. And most of those companies are kind of gone at this point, where they've been absorbed into something else. But this game here I'd played for a decent amount of time. I hadn't spent really too much in it at this point for this game. But, I mean, there's definitely been a shift at this point. This was kind of a shift in the East, and these type of games, I mean, they made pay to play less attractive for people. Well, you didn't need to have a job to play a free to play. You needed to have a job to play a pay to play. So I mean, if you didn't have a job, if you were a kid in school and you didn't want to bug your parents, hey, there was this. Now, keep in mind, I did kind of glaze over some stuff in terms of gaming. Little bonus round here for you. I mean, pay to play, that goes back as for me, it goes back as far as like, I think 90, 96, 97 technically when I was playing like MUDs, text-based adventures for I think what was it Simutronics? I'm trying to remember what the name of that company was. Yeah, Simutronics. I played Dragon Realms back in '96. And I do apologize because this video is it's a little bit impulsive. Couldn't sleep, and it's something that's rattled around for a minute. So there's no form here. In fact, they even developed something called a hero engine, which I think technically Elder Scrolls Online ended up using to some extent at some point. That may not be 100% accurate, but that hero engine has a whole story to it attached. But I mean, yeah, I played Dragon Realms. I played Gemstone. I even played. I think they had a Hercules and Xena mud too back in the day. So I mean, oddly enough, I learned more about how to read from those text-based games than I ever did in school, which that's something in itself. But anyway, it was kind of a tangent, just kind of something that just popped in my head. I remember, like, oh yeah, I did that. So yeah. So anyway, we got to this game here. There's an obvious shift. There were other games, all throughout that time frame. I had played hundreds of different MMOs. I mean, some of them with Aria, some of them with Gamigo, Webson, various other companies from even Malaysia and Singapore at the time, and those were all free to play games. Those were all free to play. But I mean, as the years went on, these games got way more egregious. Like, let's fast forward a bit here. Let's see if we can pull up. Now, Revelation Online, this came out back in 2017. These games were starting to get a lot more pay to win. I mean, this game I had put some money into. I mean, even the wife played this one with me, so she could account for how much of a job this game became as a free to play. I mean, you had tons of dailies, tons of stuff you had to do, guild wars, the whole 9 yards, and there was a pretty big, model to it. The fact that this game I think is still technically going is kind of a testament to itself. And oh, NetEase ended up running this one. Oh, I forgot the publisher behind this. So, we're getting back to 2015 in the East, 2017 in the West, and there's like an obvious shift. MMOs have been kind of down for a while. I think a lot of people who I used to play with are going to say like Soul the Ultimate Nation, Arcade. Those games were kind of like the last great bastions that we played, and things kind of started losing touch. But I don't know. I think it went downhill a lot earlier than that, and I mean it's just these companies got greedier and greedier. Like Nexon recently had to pay like millions of dollars in a fine because they tweaked boxes for the last 10 years for MapleStory and made it so where people couldn't even actually get some of the rolls in those boxes. And it's like, yeah, those boxes have been around for a minute. Gambling mechanics in some way, shape, and form has been around for a while. If it wasn't loot boxes, it was upgrades for items, which, oh, that makes me, what about Hero Online? this here, Hero Online. Now, this was potentially my first real experience with the free-to-play market, where I really felt it in terms of even though I was a kid fresh out of school, playing a lot of hours, grinding. Didn't matter with the cash shop because the cash shop just made people a lot better, and there was nothing I could do without paying, which wasn't going to happen. But here, I had felt this pretty hard pretty early on, and this game was punishing. So M game, I think they may even still be around today. I think even this game may still exist in some way, shape, or form. So this game left closed beta on 2006. So I have some stories from this game, but I mean, so when people are like, the monetization with everything this day and age, this is all new. It's like, no, mm no, 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 no. 2006, the framework for all of this. I mean, this is almost 20 years old in itself. The framework has been around for a very long time. So just to give you an idea, you know. So we had Revelations Online, which was 2017, and then what was this other? And another shift. I think it was. I'm trying to remember what the name of that game was. There was another game I had played. Was it V4? Okay, so V4 was another game. Let's see if we could find a wiki page for that and get some info out. I don't even think this game has any sort of wiki page to it. So let's just. So this is Nexon's official page for this game, which it's still getting updated to this day. Sorry, there's not really a good visual here on this one. Let's go back to. Let's see if I can find something, maybe. Let's find it here. This is the history of Nexon. Yeah, they not even have this game in their list. Where are we going here? Dragon Nest. I mean, they've had tons of games they've touched or had a hand with. Tree of Savior, spin-off to Ragnarok. Where is? Oh, they don't even have a link for V4 here. And this came out in 2020. Now, V4 was interesting because that was kind of a catch-all. That game was on phones. That game was on PC. It was an MMO. You spent a lot of money on that game. So, I mean, that game kind of brings into the mobile market. Now, gotchas themselves, I had started playing gotchas when. Let's see if I can find out here. I'm trying to think. Here we go. Sega Hero. So, we skip from Revelation over here to Sega Heroes, which this game only ran for. Actually, wow. Okay, this game didn't last very long at all. Holy shit. I thought this game went a bit longer. Man, my memory's failing me. I remember Demiurge, and this game was interesting because their shutdown following Demiurge's split from Sega to be okay. So their closure of this game was because of a split, not because of lack of finances. I think who knows, but. So this was like my first real gotcha. It's a puzzle-based game. Had all Sega characters. Played on a lot of nostalgia. Oh boy, wow, this is sounding very familiar now, isn't it? And I'm pretty sure this was like one of my first brushes with gotcha. There could have been. I don't remember when I played the Fist of the North Star mobile game. See if we can find that. Because there was a Fist of the North Star mobile game. There's a lot of other Fist of the North Star games, but where would that be? Hmm. Music dies as we're looking for this. Let's see, Jump Force. This is North Star Boxing, no. Ah, here we go. Revive. Came out in 2019. Okay, so after Sega Heroes, I jumped to Revive. Let's see if we could find that. Because I quit that at some point. Is that game still going? Oh, there's a fandom for it. Let's take a look here. Oh wow, this game is still going. So I had played this game, and it was, again, another nostalgia-based game. It was based on, an anime I liked from my childhood. Spent a lot of money in that game, and these were like some of my first iterations of gacha. Although, hell, if I kept playing this game, I wouldn't have dealt with an EOS, because apparently this game's over 4 years old at this point. It's coming up on will be coming up on 5 years old this year. So good for them. If they stick around, but you know these monetization shifts, they they happen slowly. I mean, they went from console to online to they melted together because nowadays all these games, or a lot of these games, they can be played on the consoles. Well, you can go play Genshin Impact on a bunch of consoles. You can go play some other gotchas on those consoles as well as your phone. They're all over the place, and the evolution of gaming, trying to merge in NFTs and all this other nonsense, it's not going away. And as long as people are willing to pay, there's no reason. I mean, just looking at the latest game we're playing, where I'm probably gonna do a breakdown on that video at some point, just in terms of what I think about Tacticus. Which let's see if they have an actual wiki page. Let's see, here it is. Okay, so this game released back on 2022, and we'll go over kind of their monetization. Maybe just a different type of video. I had done an overview of the game as I got into it. We'll talk more about this game in a later video, but it's interesting to see where the shift was, because there's a lot of stuff I may have left out. I've played hundreds of different games online. I'm sure there are things I missed, or I don't remember, because again, this was like a spur of the moment video. I just couldn't sleep, and I felt like kind of going over some of the history from my perspective. But I mean, you know, I miss the days where I could just play a game. I buy a $60 game. I got a $60 game. I didn't get DLC with, I'd have to spend an extra $40 to unlock the full potential of the game. I didn't have to, you know, I didn't have to feel cheated in some ways. Because, I mean, I like Persona 5 Tactica. I like Dragon Quest Monsters 3, The Dark Prince. I didn't like paying $25 extra to unlock a bunch of features in a game that should have already been there, like Dragon Quest Monsters. And I didn't want to spend an extra $20 in Tactica to unlock Akechi and Kasumi, or whatever her name was. I just, no. It made no sense. I mean, you know what? If it was like Final Fantasy, where this was being developed and they dropped it like 6 months later, and they wanted you to pay for that. I get that because they were still actively working on the game. They brought more to the table. Cool. Okay, I'll pay for a continuation of the story because I would have had to have paid $60 for another full price game, maybe 70. So $20 for maybe another 10 hours of gameplay isn't too bad. It's not a hateful proposition, but it's kind of like some of these game companies that got a bit greedy trying to charge full price for subpar experiences. And some of these companies, they know who they are. They know who they are. Like I think like there was like the Order or something. I don't remember the game, but it was just like super short. They wanted $60 for it, and you barely got 10 hours out of it. It's just, yeah. But overall, I don't really know where the monetization trend is going. I don't see it being very good for us as consumers with a lot of these different companies. So, I mean, when you see things like Baldur's Gate 3 and you see the industry trying to fight back against them and the quality and things they bring to the table, yeah, there's a reason they're doing that. Because if these companies could, they would give you as little as possible for as much as they can, because they're not your friends at the end of the day. They need to make profit. They need to show some real growth. Which maybe this because studios like Snowprint, studios like Demiurge, they're smaller and they have say. They can go and kind of do what they want, and as long as they say small, they they have some actual stay. They don't need to worry about these things. But when you get to like Square Enix, EA, all these other bigger companies, Activision, Blizzard, the whole nine yards, you start to see. I mean, look at Diablo. Diablo went from a beloved series to, wow, D4 was garbage. I hope Path of Exile 2 cleans up, because I paid for that game. I beat the story and I just didn't feel like playing anymore. It's just crap. At least D3, I liked D3. Well, D3 had the Real Money Auction House, which that was interesting in itself, where you actually made money and the company made money. But maybe that's a video for a different day, where the player monetization a little bit different than company monetization. But overall, if you guys have any experiences with monetization with these games, as far back, let me know. I mean, I'm curious to hear some of your guys' experiences, how you guys kind of navigated things, where you ended up. Because I mean, I went from being a kid getting $50 to $80 games, which prices did vary back then. They were all over the place. To spending 100, $200 a paycheck on a mobile game, which, fuck me, man. So and here we are, to doing that, to doing Netflix style subscriptions, the whole nine yards. But anyway, I just wanted to get this out there. I figured I'd give people some idea of where monetization kind of started, and where we are. Because again, I mean, the groundwork for some of this stuff goes all the way back to the Sega. It literally goes back to the Sega Channel, and maybe even beyond that. Maybe there was even a different company that tied into the internet itself. But you know, this goes pretty far back. And again, this was '94. It only lasted for 4 years because it just made no sense because of Sega Dreamcast. But yeah. Anyway, with that being said, guys, thank you again. If you like this video, like the video, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I guess, I don't know, but we'll be having some other stuff down the pipeline soon. And yeah, thinking about this now, kind of sad in a way. It's weird. Anywho, peace.